Welcome to another session of Talking Trade. I'm Ken Wasylik, Managing Director of EM Wasylik and Associates, an international business development company.
And I'm Sandi Siegel, President of ME Day. It's a pleasure today to welcome and introduce our guest, Doug Rebout. Doug's a partner at Roger Rebout and Sons Farms. And Doug, you're also the chair of DACAP, the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection Board. Very instrumental group here in Wisconsin, and you're president of the Wisconsin Soybean Association. So excited to talk to you about all the many hats you wear that touch on trade. So welcome and thanks for joining us on Talking Trade.
Well, thank you for having me.
So again, have your finger on the pulse of a lot of things going on that are relevant to trade and important for Wisconsin. And we love our farmers and you're a really important backbone of Wisconsin. So let's talk about global trade and Wisconsin agriculture and so forth, and particularly as serving on the board of DACAP. What do you see in regards to global trade today and looking forward and how that's impacting Wisconsin agriculture?
Well, right now, there's so much uncertainty out there in global trade. Um, for soybeans, China has always been our biggest market that we sell to. I mean, China buys more soybeans than the rest of the world combined. They buy over 60% of our soybeans that we export. And so now here that China has quit buying from us, they haven't bought anything from us here in the last month. That's a major impact for us.
And I know there's agriculture carve-outs and the trade deals in, conversations with China. Is soybean have its own, piece in those trade negotiations?
Well, soybeans are a large part of the trade negotiations, because last year in 2024, China bought almost right around 1.2 billion bushels of soybeans from the U.S. And I mean, here in Wisconsin, not just to China, but everywhere, we sell two-thirds of the soybeans grown here in Wisconsin are exported.
Right.
And so when China, like I said, when China quits buying these other markets, they can't make it up. So yeah, like I said, soybeans at the beginning there, soybeans are a huge part of the trade deals with China.
Okay. And I know Mexico and Japan are also pretty relevant to the volumes of export. We recently made a trade deal with Japan and of course with Mexico as well. Is that equally impacted? Are you seeing decrease across all of your exports, or is China just so significant because of the volume?
Well, China's so significant because of the volume. Yeah, some of these other countries are buying more from us. Like you said, China, Mexico, Canada, these are all some of our major export countries, especially here for Wisconsin, not just for soybeans, but for all agricultural products because of their proximity. And, so yeah, some countries were increasing what we're trading to them. But like I said, it cannot make up that loss that we have in China.
Okay.
So take a big demand like China out of the equation, and there's not other markets that fill in. What's the ramifications besides probably a lower price? Is it the farmers are not generating the type of revenue they need to, or what's the downstream effect of these tariffs?
Yeah, like you said, with China not buying, our prices have dropped significantly. You figure 3 years ago, we were selling soybeans for $14, $15 a bushel. And now today's price, it's $9.30. So that's $5 a bushel difference. And, just on our farm alone, we grow roughly 80,000 bushels of soybeans. So that's $400,000 economic impact just to our farm alone compared to a couple of years ago. And, that's a big hit to us. That means we're not able to go out and, invest back into our farm because we don't take that money and put it away in the bank. We're investing it back into our farm with equipment, infrastructure, and everything. And when we don't have that money, we're not doing that. So it's not just impacting us, it's impacting our local communities, these farm communities that rely on all this money. There's lots of businesses that are really being impacted. It's not just the farmers.
Yeah. So as the president of the Wisconsin Soybean Association, is the association doing any advancement or helping the farmers in any way, lobbying or in
By
any
lobbying, yeah.
aspect?
Yeah, we are. I mean, I go out to Washington, D.C. usually about 3 times a year and talk to our legislators out there and just telling them our stories and telling them how this is impacting us and what we need. You know, for China, losing these markets, losing a market like China, even if what we're telling them is, even if we don't go or we stop this trade war right now, if we say, okay, let's just go free trade and everything, forget all the tariffs. China has already built up that infrastructure with Argentina and Brazil, and they're not just going to turn around and buy from us again and say, "Oh yeah, we're back." It's going to take 20, 30 years to get these markets back. And that's what we're, as an association, that's what we're telling our legislators. You know, with that big of an impact, we need to stop this right now, and you know, we can't go down anymore. We have to stop the losses we have and start regaining that.
And I'm curious, what's the legislature's response to that? Because it appears that nothing is going to stop in the near future.
Every legislator you talk to is different, and they all say they understand. When I'm out there and talking to them, sometimes some of them feel powerless. They can't do anything. They want to help us, but they don't know what to do. They're trying. They say they're, working on new markets and working on aid and all these other things. And, I believe they are because they know how important um, agriculture is to the economy of the US. So I truly believe that all the legislators out there are trying to help us in some way. Everyone has a little different, you know, thinking or
Perspective.
reasoning of what it is to help us. But I think they're all trying to help us. I mean, every time I go out there, I have good conversations. I don't care what office I go into, what party I go into. We're talking agriculture. It should be and it is the most bipartisan issue out there because it affects everyone. And when I'm talking with the legislators, we agree on some things, we disagree on some things. And when I leave the office, we shake hands and say, all right, I'll see you again in a couple months and we'll talk again.
Mhm.
Well, as I said in welcoming you, I mean, farmers are near and dear to America, to all of us, and I just, so help me out. I'm more versed in certain areas of all the tariff impact than others. So and agriculture is a big card that we play back and forth on exports and one of the things that we negotiate. So it's my understanding that in the negotiations with China that there was an agreement to purchase more agriculture. I don't know if it gets down to detail as to commodities. But I think what I'm hearing, and I'm wondering if you can validate it, is that like many things, as these trade wars and the push-pull and the power struggles are happening, countries are looking elsewhere, right? Whether it's import or export. So, when China at its peak of our power struggles, they looked elsewhere. when, we were put a slapping on or threatening to slap on the super high import tariffs. And now they're kind of settled in, right? And
Exactly. That's
so,
exactly what's happening.
okay, so is it fair to say though that after all is said and done with some of the negotiations that have since happened, we got some wins for agriculture? I mean, is that enough to bring it back, or there needs to be more? Is
There,
that
there needs to be more.
okay?
Like I said, I've mentioned a number of times that
Yeah.
loss that we've had to China, we've got wins in other countries.
Okay.
And, here in Wisconsin, just 3 years ago, I think it was, DeLong's opened up a new agricultural
Right.
export
Yes,
terminal
right,
in
right.
Yeah.
Milwaukee.
Yep.
And, getting product out the St. Lawrence Seaway has opened up new markets
Yes.
for our products,
Okay.
but it's still not going to make up that difference,
Okay.
of what, because we're not just looking at Wisconsin soybeans. It'd be nice if we did, but we're looking at US soybean numbers. So what
Right.
happens all over the country is impacting us.
Sure. Okay.
Sure.
And I'm very ignorant as to growing soybeans. So is that land that can be repurposed easily? I know it with some, product that's not the case at all.
Well, on the farms, most farms here in Wisconsin, corn and soybeans are the two main crops.
Okay.
And, farmers can adjust how much of each they grow. They can, okay, soybean prices are down, so I'm going to grow more corn. But most farms have a routine that they go through. Like on our farm, our land it's usually 2 years of corn, 1 year of soybeans. We rotate it around because that's what's best for our soil.
Sure.
Um, so we can change that, the number of acres, but then that's just going to increase the volume, the amount of corn that we have, and that could impact the corn market there because
Right.
all of a sudden, okay, we're going to grow less soybeans because we're not selling them, so we're going to grow more corn. Well, now what are we going to do with the corn?
And what does that do to that price and
Right.
so
And
forth? Yeah.
because we can't, we can adjust those numbers a little bit, but we can't go and say, you know what? Soybeans aren't selling, so we're gonna let that land sit. Or, you know what? We're gonna go and raise, you know, 2,000 acres of sunflowers or something because
Sure.
we don't, like on our farm, we don't have the equipment for that. We don't have the knowledge for that. And then there's not a market for that. We'd have to find that market and get that product there. So it's not that easy to switch to something else.
Oh, understood. Well, thank you for that.
Well,
So go
I
ahead.
see. Yeah, I see the farmers have the same demands or same issues that manufacturers do. It takes a long term to switch supply. That's switch your production. Um, Farming is agriculture is in that as well. I'm just curious, yeah, since you're on the board of DADCAP, the situation with the soybeans, is that the same in other crops in other, um, let's say cranberries and ginseng and corn and dairy?
Well, yeah, with tariffs, all agriculture products are getting hit pretty heavy. So yeah, you can look across the board. Some of them are going, we are increasing a little bit, and some of that has to do with the money that Governor Evers and the legislature has put into um, to the debt cap for export and trying to grow our export markets. The state has invested in that, so we're able to, you know, kind of cushion that blow a little bit because of that. Our exports right now are down compared to a year ago. I think we're down like 0.5% from what we were a year ago, but national, I think those numbers are like 2.3. So we're not here in Wisconsin, we're down, but not as much as other parts of the country. And like I said, I think a lot of that has to do with the investment
Right.
that the state has put into this.
To offset it. Again, if they can source it more competitively in different countries, why wouldn't they, right? And
Right.
that's the unfortunate thing, and,
Yep, and
yeah,
you mentioned earlier, kind of like manufacturing. Yeah, manufacturing is in the same situation, but the only difference is there is, okay, if manufacturing can't sell their product, they can stop production and, kind of and lay off their workers for a little while. They don't want to,
yes,
but they can stop that production for a little while until, they get the what they have for sale back down under control. Where farming, we can't just say, okay, we're not going to grow something. So it's
sure,
similar, but there are some big differences there.
Mhm.
yeah.
Right, right.
Any last shout out, suggestion for our legislation, politicians on,
Well,
what,
like I said before, let's let's stop the bleeding right now. Let's, try and get it so we're not losing any more markets. And, we do have to, yeah, China's huge. We would love to get part of that back, but we do need to concentrate on other countries. The more diverse we are, the better it is for us.
sure,
And then we also need to, so we're not so reliant on export markets, we need to find more uses for domestic use of our soybeans and corn and everything, whether it's biofuels or ethanol and
right,
stuff like
right,
that. So like I said, we're not so reliant on foreign export markets.
right, absolutely.
Okay.
Doug, thank you for your insight. I'm sorry we don't have more exciting times to talk about, but I hope that you see some progress and that things turn around.
Well, it's agriculture. We always try and keep a positive
Right,
outlook, and
right,
I have to truly believe things will get better. We're going to go through some rough times here,
right.
but and you have to have faith that things are going to get better.
Absolutely. Well, again,
Okay.
thank you for your
Hope
insight,
so.
and Doug Rebout, thank you for joining us on Talking Trade.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
You've been listening to Talking Trade with Sandi Siegel and Ken Wasylik, sponsored by the Wisconsin Center for Manufacturing and Productivity, Dairy Farmers of Wisconsin, Carroll University, and Michael Best Strategies.